In late 2015, I purchased an Indian dinner from a booth at the Cherokee Indian Fair in the Qualla Boundary, a land trust in western North Carolina that's home to the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. As I ate my meal of green beans, fried cabbage and potatoes, fatback, fried pork chop, and chestnut bread, I was struck by the high obesity level and seemingly unhealthy pallor of many of the folks around me. A fry bread merchant named Bruce Reed told me that big changes have come to his people since the opening of Harrah's Cherokee Casino on tribal lands in 1997. Changes in lifestyle, like modern kids going out to the mall or Walmart instead of to the woods or out fishing, and also changes in diet thanks to greater disposable income to partake in the area's growing number of fast food options. Back in the Qualla Boundary during a recent Cherokee Heritage Day, I catch Cherokee elder Martha Sherrill preparing hominy over a wood fire outside the Museum of the Cherokee Indian.
See this corn right here? See the skin? It starts coming off. All that'll come off. Then we take it out and we rinse it. See, it's a treat nowadays. I've been making it 3 days here because people saying, oh, skin me some.
The process Cheryl is demonstrating is called Nictamalization, an alkali processing of corn which yields nutritional benefits as well as enhanced flavor. The three sisters, corn, beans, and squash, were the primary traditional crops of native North America and formed the basis of the Cherokee diet. Corn was the most important plant food of the Cherokee.
The hominy, we'd have it like sweet with walnuts and beans, and then we'd make it sweet or just eat it like that. Or Mom would mix it with beans, and then we'd have it like a whole dinner.
Bean bread was another favorite way to prepare corn. It involved making a stiff dough from cornmeal and cooked beans, wrapping the mixture in a corn leaf, and boiling it like a dumpling. Chestnuts could be used instead of beans, making it chestnut bread. Cheryl recalls gathering spring greens like creasy greens and turnip greens with her family and putting up jars of food, including hominy, to have for the winter months.
I like to fix chicken and dumplings and ribs with kraut and potatoes. More or less boiled foods instead of frying it, because that's what we usually eat back in the olden days.
Johnny Sue Myers, who I meet inside the museum, is the author of The Gathering Place, Traditional Cherokee Dishes and Southern Appalachian Cooking, which includes Cherokee methods of preparing groundhog, poke salad, broiled trout, and corn and beans. It also includes recipes for Southern favorites not specific to the Cherokee, like fried okra, potato salad, buttermilk biscuits, country ham, and applesauce stack cake.
I fix bean bread. I fix mostly meats. I fix bear. I fix venison. I fix trout with shoemake seasoning. It's a spice that you derive from the berries, the real fuzzy berries that grow on the top of shoemake. We call it shoemake here, and most people refer to it as sumac. That's Appalachian slang. But it's really good, and of course our mainstay in our household is venison because my husband's an avid hunter.
Katua is a Cherokee word for homeland, and it's the name given to this area of the western North Carolina mountains. The Katua bioregion is one of the most diverse temperate ecosystems in the world. The Cherokee lived in an exceptionally fertile territory and knew how to find wild plants for eating and medicine year-round. Unlike other Native American tribes who were removed from their territory, those Cherokee who managed to avoid the forced migration west in 1838, known as the Trail of Tears, or later walked back home, were able to maintain their connection to and knowledge of their natural landscape.
Right now, creasy greens are good to pick, but in turnip greens, wild turnip greens.
Besides many different types of greens, the Cherokee also ate wild roots and nuts like black walnuts, acorns, chestnuts, and hickory nuts, and wild berries. They hunted game animals like bear, deer, rabbits, and squirrels, which were traditionally either boiled or roasted.
Cherokees didn't fry back before let's say before everything become modernized, you either baked it or you boiled it. So the frying only came in. The Europeans brought all this bad stuff to it, but we've learned to utilize it and live with it. It had to be hard in the 1800s. My grandmother was an excellent cook, but it had to be hard. There was no refrigeration. So everything you had to be dried and then rehydrated. And the white-tailed deer was extinct around here for years. Reason being, the traders, and this is back in the 1700s, they eliminated the deer. Europe was hungry for deer hides. So they would come over, and you would have to have a stack of deer hides, probably as tall as you are, for a musket, a cooking pot.
Both Cheryl and Myers, who grew up in the 40s and 50s, speak of hardship in their early years.
It was hard growing up. Back then, nothing was plentiful. We lived up on the mountain, and there wasn't no cars or nothing around like that. And we used to have to go to the store and carry our groceries in. We'd have to go up a trail, up a mountain, carrying stuff. So we had to get it in, and then it had to last us.
The Cherokee have seen plenty of hard times, many of which resulted from contact with foreigners. A century before the Trail of Tears, about half of the Cherokee tribe died in a smallpox epidemic. Around the same time, their deer population were going nearly extinct due to the deerskin trade. The American chestnut, a favorite wild edible of the Cherokee and one of the most important trees of their native forest, was destroyed by an Asian fungus in the mid-1950s. The loss of the Native American chestnut is just one of many losses in traditional Cherokee foodways.
I don't have kids, but all my friends have kids, and they usually go to McDonald's drive-thru. Nobody really cooks anymore. Nobody young.
That's Jordan Littlejohn, Johnny Sue Myers' granddaughter. She's learned to make some of the traditional Cherokee dishes, such as bean bread, from her grandmother. Now in her late 20s, Littlejohn says she is the only one of her friends who knows how to prepare such things. Both Cheryl and Myers speak of the shift toward fast food and away from gardening as the biggest change they've seen in their tribe's diet in their lifetimes.
When I was growing up, we didn't have fast foods and couldn't run to the restaurants. We had to eat what was put before us. And that was mainly what was put before us, fatback and grits and cornbread, beans, kraut, pickle beans and all that. Well, I'm glad I grew up when I did, because that way I know how to do this, and I also know how to go out in the woods and get greens and get stuff to eat and pick berries, and I know how to go out and cut wood, and I know how to start fires, and I know different trees. You don't find too many kids that know that, because they don't go out in the woods. They lay in front of the TV or whatever kind of box there is.
Myers points out that the shift toward eating fast food was happening before the casino, however.
Now, we've had McDonald's here since the 60s. Matter of fact, we had 2 McDonald's here. Then Wendy's came in.
But since the arrival of the casino, the dependence on fast food seems only to have gotten worse, and the health of the Cherokee people has suffered as a result.
We have a higher rate of diabetes now in our families. It's because of the fast foods, fried foods, starchy foods. Fast foods have come in here and literally destroyed our people.
There are 13 fast food restaurants within a 2-mile radius of downtown Cherokee, not including the fast food inside the casino. Cherokee Choices, a tribal diabetes prevention education program, says Cherokee men and women are twice as likely to be obese and more than 3 times as likely to suffer from type 2 diabetes than other racial and ethnic groups in North Carolina. Myers says she feels lucky to be 74 and still healthy.
I'm thankful. I'm very thankful. But then I've always eaten a lot of vegetables, been careful about the amount of pork, tried to put a good, healthy meal on the table for me and my children. But in spite of that, I have 2 sons that are diabetics. I lost a brother that was a bad diabetic, and I've lost a sister to diabetes.
A few days after speaking with Myers, I meet with Janet Owl, the Family and Consumer Science Agent for the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians Cooperative Extension Office.
As the FCS agent, one of my primary roles is to bring healthy eating choices, nutrition classes to the youth and young adults here in Cherokee.
Owl is an enrolled member of the Cherokee tribe.
I grew up in the 70s, went to high school through the 80s, and then lived here up until now.
Owl describes how the casino, which attracts over 3 million visitors each year, has changed the feel of the town, bringing more traffic in the off-seasons and more fast food chains to the area.
Cherokee's always been a tourist town, so we've been used to, having people come in and on summer vacations. I know when I was growing up, we had one fast food. Well, we had very few. But for the most part, once the casino come in, then a lot of the fast food restaurants started coming in. It did have an effect on, what we were eating.
I ask Owl if she's seen the rhythm of life for her tribe change at all in recent years as a result of the financial changes brought about by the casino.
I'm not comfortable talking about that part.
When it comes to questions of money, Owl suggests that I may have better luck speaking with someone outside the tribe. Ethnobotanist David Kozo works at the Cooperative Extension Office with Janet Owl. Kozo runs a program called the Revitalization of Traditional Cherokee Artisan Resources, an initiative of the Cherokee Preservation Foundation that assists Cherokee artists and also works to introduce traditional wild foods into the Cherokee diet. Kozo is not ethnically Cherokee, which makes me wonder if he has sensed any resistance or resentment from the Cherokee as a white man offering dietary advice to the community.
That's what I don't do, is I don't tell them what to eat. I just tell them why what was around them was good. It takes a long time for folks to get comfortable with you in a community, in this community. Took 5 years for a lot of people that I interacted with to really be comfortable with me. And I think some of it is, they've had a lot of people come in and take things, and I don't want anything.
Kozo has written about the dietary practices of the Eastern Band of Cherokee and their effect on health.
When you see most of the health issues people are dealing with here, they're basically nutritional. And diabetes is a big deal. Obesity. I teach a class in the area. It's called The Wisdom of Native Foodways, where we look at traditional diet and how it can kind of impact some of the contemporary health issues that are being dealt with. And so I try to incorporate the wild foods into that as much as I can.
I asked Kozo how the Cherokee diet shifted.
It started after World War II, when the commodities program kicked in. And you'll see this in almost all Native American communities, that, diabetes pre-World War II wasn't a big issue. Post-World War II, it really starts rising. And the way I can figure it is the government had a lot of stuff left over from the war effort, and they had to feed the Indians anyway, so they said, let's just give it to them. And that's where you see commodities really kicking in. On the reservations, they got flour, dried milk, and some kind of grease, and that was your fry bread. You can see what they call a traditional Cherokee meal today. And you'll see bean bread, which is a traditional food. It's like a little hockey puck. It's a dumpling. It's a boiled dumpling of corn. It'll have either beans in it, or sometimes it'll have chestnuts in it. And that's pretty traditional. But the rest of the plate, you'll have cabbage, potatoes, chicken. These are all introduced foods. So a lot of those are just the changes that happened over the years. And, when your food sources come from commodities or the local supermarket, then what's truly traditional food falls by the wayside.
Kozo says the government schools, which started in the late 1800s and lasted through the passage of the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978, banned the Cherokee language and had a goal of assimilating and acculturating the Cherokee.
That was part of the whole, let's remove the Indianness from the Indian. It was a big deal, it correlated with the Indian schools where they, took the children and tried to get them away from native ways. It was an assimilation process. You see a push by the government to stop traditional ways of living, and you will meet people here, like whole generations, where culture is not talked about because they were told it was bad.
I learned that there is a term used a lot on Indian reservations, kamad bod, which points to the relationship between consumption of government commodities and obesity. Fry bread made from white rather than the traditional corn flour is one relic of government commodity programs that has become a staple food in Native American homes and festivals across the U.S. and Canada. Kozo believes that while fry bread has become a symbol of unity and pride among the Cherokee, it has contributed to the loss of traditional Cherokee dietary practices as well as higher rates of obesity.
The Indian fry bread was not a tradition anywhere. It's a result of government commodities. It's basically a donut.
I find Nikki Crisp and her mother, Toni Tockett, preparing fry bread from white self-rising flour, creamer, and other modern-day ingredients under the Nikki's Fry Bread tent at the Indian Heritage Day.
I roll it out. I get a pinch out about a tennis ball size dough, and then I roll it out with some flour, and then I pick it up and slap all the flour off as best I can before I stick in the oil, because the flour can be burnt in the oil and turn the oil brown.
Crisp considers fry bread an important part of her tribe's cultural heritage.
You won't find a Native person that does not like fry bread. That goes back to when the removal and having very little to use for food. So we've had to learn to adapt to different things. And so that's one of the foods that's always stayed with us. I learned it from my mom.
I asked Toni Tockett, Crisp's mother, if she considers fry bread a traditional Cherokee food.
Well, no, but because sometimes, like my mom when I was growing up, she didn't cook it like this. She cooked it on in a frying pan. I guess the non-natives call it a Johnny cake. And she'd put pinto beans in it and bake it. So it's kind of like a biscuit.
Do you cook it like that anymore?
I never did. McDonald's come around, and my frying pan went out the window.
Crisp and Tockett believe fast food fits with today's busier lifestyle.
Everybody's moving so fast-paced. They don't have time to get home and cook. So it's easy. Drive through and get it and go home.
I tell Kozo about my conversations with tribal elders Martha Sherrill and Johnny Sue Myers, who say the modern lifestyle is much more rushed than it was in their childhoods.
I mean, you find that all across this Appalachian region, southern Appalachian region. People didn't used to have 9-to-5 jobs. They didn't exist.
Kozo also says that choosing to spend food dollars at fast food restaurants was a sign of prosperity for the Cherokee.
It was a big deal when McDonald's first came here, as it was in a lot of small towns. We see fast food as kind of the cheap food on the end, but when they're the only restaurants in town, that's a sign of prosperity.
Kozo explains that before the casino, income was mainly from tourism. Other than that, he says it was a typical Appalachian informal income.
I mean, you worked on the farm a little bit. You might gather some ginseng. You might, you hunt a squirrel. It's what they used to call the informal economy. You might sell some stuff at the flea market. Or you would trade. Or when it was hunting season, you went hunting. When it was farming season, you did a little farming. But you were never chained to something like that.
Johnny Sue Myers says she has been trying to figure out why the lives of members of her tribe are so rushed and busy nowadays.
Let's talk about a young woman today. For one thing, she works. She gets up at 4:30. She has to go pick her kids up, and her kids, if they're involved in sports, she has to go take them. And rather than drive maybe 10 miles home and then come back and get them, she'll probably wait. Okay, she doesn't have time to cook dinner when she goes home. So she may run by Kentucky Fried, or she may run by McDonald's.
Yeah, everybody's just got more on their plate than they ever did before, in more ways than one. People have more, but they don't necessarily have as much time to enjoy it as they used to.
I've been hearing so much about the casino, but when I finally enter, it's still a sensory overload. Part of me can't resist being dazzled by the neon flashing lights and game machine music as soon as I step in the doors. At the food court, I try to interview a Cherokee woman working at Dunkin' Donuts. A security guard stops me and tells me to speak with the casino's marketing department, but no one is available. The telecommunicator on duty says, by way of explanation, "There's a lot of money here."
All of a sudden there's income. I've been told, I don't know the figures on this, but I've been told that the unemployment rate in Cherokee before the casino was about 75%. So suddenly there's jobs here. There's people have income. They're getting per cap. They get several $1,000s a year from having a casino here. So you see the fast food places spring up. You see food choices that people have seen elsewhere but didn't have here, and now they have them all day long.
In the first decade after the casino opened, the median family household income jumped 82%, and the poverty rate fell by a third. Half of the gaming revenue received by the tribal council funds tribal operations and infrastructure. The other half goes to its 15,000 enrolled members in the form of per capita payments, which in 2016 totaled over $11,000 annually. Minors also get per capita distributions, but their funds are set aside in a trust that provides a lump sum payment around their 18th birthday. The financial impact of the per cap, as it's known, is so great that it causes Cheryl to worry that things may be too easy for the younger generation.
They think everything's just handed to them. They don't realize that you have to get out and work for it.
Nikki Crisp and Tony Talkett say there's no question that the per capita checks from casino revenues have helped members of their tribe.
Most people take their money and they pay their bills up. They have new homes and cars, and they pay the bills up. So it's a good thing. Even though the preachers around here said it's the devil. Because it's gambling.
While currently only 15% of the casino's 2,600 employees are tribal members, gaming revenue has created job opportunities for Cherokee outside the casino in areas like social services and tribal administration. Gambling profits have allowed the tribe to address many social problems in their community. By the end of 1998, the tribe had already constructed a new wastewater treatment plant, funded new child care programs, and remodeled the Museum of the Cherokee Indian. Other changes made thanks to casino revenue over the years have included improved housing and schools, the construction of hospitals and other healthcare facilities, a park and youth center, and college scholarships.
Something like a casino is always going to be a mixed blessing. There were a lot of people who were very much against it because of how it would impact the community. And, it probably in its wake, the money that it's brought in has had some negative impacts. There's a lot of drug problems in the community. There's a lot. But on the other side of that, it's also brought cultural preservation.
Among other wild food projects, David Kozo runs a backyard ramp patch initiative, one of a growing number of Cherokee partnerships focused on plants that gives out ramp bulbs that families can plant in their yards. Ramps, a garlicky-smelling wild mountain leek that's now celebrated in festivals across Appalachia, is one of the first greens to appear in the spring. The Cherokee gathered the young ramp shoots and used them as food, and a tonic to treat coughs and colds and cleanse the blood from toxins built up over winter months.
We bagged ramps yesterday. Our program does a backyard ramp patch, and we give out bags 50 ramps so people can start a ramp patch at the house because you can't go up in the park anymore to get them. So
Overharvesting by outside gatherers has caused the Cherokee to lose access to traditional gathering areas. Foraging for ramps in Great Smoky Mountains National Park was banned in 2007, and the Eastern Band has been engaged in talks seeking permission to harvest ramps and another native green called sochan on national park land.
One of the things that my initiative does is we fund some of the research in that area. And we've been working with the North Carolina Arboretum Germplasm Repository. So we're looking at ways to propagate and sustainably harvest some of the wild foods. So like we're working on an article about one of the wild greens that Cherokee gathered, and we're looking at it. It's an incredibly sustainable plant. It's called sochan. It's the Cutleaf Coneflower. It thrives when you harvest it. You know, we've got some data now for that. Well, we can take that to the park and say, look, what people do here doesn't hurt this plant.
Listening back to our interview, the question dawns on me. Are these wild foods programs and this research trying to expand access to and protections for native plants only made possible through casino money? I write to Kozo, who confirms that, like all the new social services, none of these initiatives, including his work with the Cherokee Preservation Foundation, would be possible without the casino.
I mean, I've been here 13 years now, and I see so much more of people embracing what it means to be Cherokee. The cultural leadership program, the language immersion program, school. It's stepping away from that, the patronage of the federal government. So the casino allowed that.
I take another look inside the casino. Selu Garden Cafe, which serves breakfast and lunch, has a corn logo. The word Selu is Cherokee for corn, and is also the name of the Cherokee goddess of the corn. Selu's all-day breakfast menu lists Cherokee sunrise fry bread, described as thin-sliced prime rib, mushrooms, onion and peppers piled high on scratch-made fry bread with scrambled eggs, smoked Gouda, and arugula. It's by no means a heritage dish, but it does at least nod to Cherokee Foodways. And in the flashy, contrived bubble of the casino that seems worlds apart from the natural environment of the Katua bioregion outside its doors, that may be a significant start. Martha Sherrill says she and some of her friends use part of their per capita payments on raw ingredients for traditional food.
Whenever like we get that money off of there, I always go out and find me a bunch of this to last me 6 months. I buy up my cornmeal and stuff. Because it's gotten expensive because it's so hard to get now.
I could conclude that in some ways, despite bringing more fast food options to the area and allowing for greater food budgets to partake in eating out, the casino's main impact may be allowing steps towards sovereignty, helping Cherokee traditions, including traditional Cherokee food, return. But being an outsider, and in light of the Cherokee's history of exploitation, I'd rather not let my own perspective be the last word.
Then she stick a hole in it. Let the spirits get out.
Let it rise. Drop it and let it rise.
Now there's 8 of us, just like me. Patty, my sister, she's the baby, and she's a, what is Patty's title?
Social worker.
A social worker. And so she's within the addiction and teaching about, how you say that, historical grief, helping people with wondering why they're hurt and mad and all the time. And it's handed down from generation to generation.
Do you ever talk with your siblings about the effect of the casino on your people?
They're happy. They love it. I'm telling you, it has made my life a whole lot easier. So I can't tell you about anybody else's feelings and how they like it or whatever, but in my eyes of seeing how it's helped the families tremendously.